City of Stevens Point Finance Committee meeting, recorded December 14, 2020.
Thanks, everyone. We will try to move this along. And I have 6 o'clock, and we are going to call the Finance Committee meeting to order. It is December 14th, 2020. And our first action is roll call. And I don't know if that's Carrie or Corey.
I can do it.
Okay.
Slowinski. Alder Slowinski. Okay.
I see him. At least I see his name.
Okay. Well, we'll maybe come back to that one. Maybe
Sure.
he's just getting set up.
Thank
Shore.
Here.
Morrow.
Here.
Johnson.
I am here.
And Dalton.
Here.
Okay, great. And maybe give another call for Alder Slowinski.
God. Nope, you're here.
Nope,
We can hear you,
You're
Jeremy.
here. Don't say anything that you don't want anyone else to hear.
I'll tell you, I am not a fan of my internet right now. I've been fine, and all of a sudden it just locks up on me. I can't do anything.
So it
Can
may
you
be
hear me?
best, Alder, if anybody's having internet problems, first of all, A, turn off your video. B, call in via phone.
Well, I'm on the phone.
Okay.
But just do
I
a
do it
call in.
via-
Don't do the regular Zoom.
Yeah. You're okay. We can hear you, Alder Slowinski, so at least that's a plus.
I hope you didn't hear any of the cuss words I was saying.
I didn't. That's why I jumped in and was hoping that I was trying to save you from that.
All right.
All
Thank you.
right. Thanks. I did my good deed for the day. All right.
Okay, so we have 5 present.
Thank you, Comptroller Treasurer. All right, we will be doing something here after this second item. We will be recessing so that we can move into a special council meeting, which will of course be presided over by the mayor. So our second item on the agenda, because this needs to,
Madam Chair, I want to point out that the council meeting will not happen until 6:30.
Until 6:30. All right.
6:30. So council meetings have to be set
I
specific
thought it was
day and time.
6:15.
It's 6:30 on the agenda.
Okay. I thought it was 6:15. My error. So
No problem.
please interrupt me when 6:30 arrives if we get lost with time. So we will recess at 6:30 to move into a special council meeting. So item 2 is approve funding for the purchase and installation of a software program for the police and fire departments, approval of a cost sharing agreement with Portage County, and approval of shared agency agreements with Motorola. And I believe Motorola has all of our communication systems. So I will leave it to either Comptroller Treasurer Laddick, Chief Zenner, or Chief Finn to fill us in.
Sure. Well, I guess I can start it out, and then the two of them can certainly add. But basically, this is something that is in our capital plan for 2022, and we've been working with the county and some other agencies as well to set up this county-wide records management and computer-aided dispatch system. And the county recently informed us that they can get a really good deal from the vendor that they selected, Motorola, if they're able to move this project up and implement it for 2021. So since we don't have this in the budget until 2022 and the village of Plover is in our same situation, the county has offered to basically front the money for the expense for 2021, of course, with us agreeing that we will pay for this in 2022 as far as our share for this implementation. as far as the overall expense for the implementation, we're looking at a capital expense that would be in the 2022 capital budget of $102,533 for the purchase of the software and the setup. There are also operating costs. However, this system will be replacing the records management system that the police department currently uses. So the net increase is pretty reasonable. We'd be looking at a net increase of $2,915 as far as the additional operating expenses between their old system that they're retiring and the new system. So, and then also included in the packet is the cost sharing agreement with Portage County, since this is an intergovernmental project. And then also some of the agreements with Motorola as well. So, and then I don't know if either of the chiefs had anything to add.
Yeah, I could add into that. We've been working on this with different work groups for approximately a year. It's going to handle all of our records management systems, our evidence-based CAD, computer-aided dispatch for the police department and the fire department. And as Corey said, this involves Plover. Actually, UWSP police will also be part of this program. Initially, we did have it as part of our capital for request for 2021. And the discussions that we had with the county at that point was that if a decision was made in 2021 that they were going to front it at that point, where it'd go to 2022. The only reason, as Corey said, why this is going forward right now, they got a significant discounts to include the maintenance annually. I believe we're coming in at $21,500 approximately. If I recall right, talking with Captain Ostrowski, that's about a 5% each year discount, even on the maintenance costs that we got moving forward on that this year. So, Chief, you got anything? I guess I'm done.
Oh, like Chief Center said, this has been in the works with different work groups for over a year. The system they're replacing, I believe, is over 15 years old. This will also allow our new paging system to be integrated with CAD and give us all the information in the field dispatching, and then our pre-incident plans will be able to be dumped in CAD, so the incident commander will have everything right on the scene. It's a major upgrade, and like Chief Zenner said, the discount is why this was pushed through this year. Other than that, I'm here for any questions.
All right. Questions from the committee for Comptroller Treasurer or either of the chiefs? Question from other alders? Questions from members of the public? All right, I have one question for Chief Zenner. You talked about evidence-based modeling for dispatch. I'm not sure if you could explain that, because I'm used to evidence-based decision-making modeling.
No, not it. It's evidence, our evidence module, actually property.
Module, okay.
Computer-aided dispatch, our CAD system, it also includes, so.
Okay. I didn't know if it was related to what's been commonly referred to as evidence-based decision-making in criminal justice reform. And I didn't know if it was related to the type of services that would be dispatched. So thank you for clarifying that. They're considering, we had no questions other than mine, which was a clarification. Thank you for that, Chief Zenner. I guess I would entertain a motion on this particular agenda item.
This is Alder Slowinski. I would move to approve the funding for the purchase and installation of a software program for the police and fire departments, approval of a cost sharing agreement with Portage County, and approval of shared agency agreements with Motorola.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
We do have a second. And again, one last call. All right. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Anyone opposed would be no. Abstentions? Motion carries. Item 3 is accept and place on files letters of support for the Plover River Trail Crossing project. And in your packet, you saw that there was 2 more letters. Actually, one was from last month. And one was, the one from last month I'm bringing back because I didn't clearly state who it was from. So that is from the Aldo Leopold Society. So I hope you enjoyed reading that. I appreciate the support. Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll get to you in a minute. And then the other was our friends at Point Brewery, which is always nice to hear from them. And today, it's not in your packet, but we'll bring that for you next month, was from Jan Way, Town of Hull, on her behalf. She was speaking on her behalf, but she's from the Town of Board. And again, increasing support for a community project. It's nice to see. I'm going to put it in a plug for the Friends of Emerson Park. We have that kind of support for Emerson Park, and hopefully that will grow as well. Similarly for the Plover River Trail Crossing. Any questions first from the committee about those 2 letters of support for the project? Any members, other council members? Sorry, my brain just went dead for a moment. Other council members? Mr. Mayor, you had your hand up.
I just wanted to make sure we got Jan's letter in there.
Absolutely. I had a note sitting there so I would not forget, because gray cells are like my head, you know, that's turning more and more gray, and those gray cells are kind of fading away. So thank you for that reminder. All right. Duly accepted and placed on file. Thank you to the Aldo Leopold Society and the Point Brewery for their support in this upcoming project. It is truly appreciated to have community members support us, and these, especially these kind of organizations. Item 4, approve funding for initial design, engineering, and geotechnical work related to the Plover River Crossing project. And I had a very nice conversation with Comptroller Treasurer Laddick and Director Badoon about this. And I will let Director Badoon and Comptroller Treasurer take it from here.
All right, thank you. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, excellent. Yes, there was a memo was actually written by Director Kramer, so I think he should hopefully be available as well if there's questions.
Yes.
And,
actually, Director Kramer was on that call too. I believe he
yes.
left his hunting place to be on that call. So thank you for your dedication to the city of Stevens Point, Director Kramer. Go ahead.
So yeah, so if there are otherwise any questions, I think, you know, what we tried to do was kind of lay out what we're looking for at the moment, as well as give everybody an understanding of where we're going. So, I mean, with the funding, you know, at the bottom of the memo, that page, this Director Kramer had written, you know, of this eventual funding throughout the next few years, we would be looking right now, so we can start to move forward on things, given the timing and necessity of some of the activities. Most importantly is the geotechnical work that needs to be done while the ground is frozen, thus need to complete it here this winter. Would be looking for, and of course, you'd think that I would have, oh, I do have it. I couldn't find it. There it is. So we're looking for approval for $60,000 at this time, which would then allow us to move forward with some engineering services, including the geotechnical work, which is, again, as I mentioned, is necessary at this time, just given the conditions of which we're working in the river bottom to do the geotechnical work while it's frozen, in order to meet the deadline that we're looking at of a 2022 TAP grant approval on that cycle. So only gives us the one winter to complete the work. And so we'd be looking for that funding now so we can get started and move forward.
Thank you, Director Badoon. Anything else, Director Kramer?
No, Director Badoon covered most of it. You will notice in the memo, we provided kind of a general timeline of next step deliverables as we roll through this process. There, as Director Badoon mentioned, that January of 2022 is that large date that we're really zeroing in on. So previous discussions had that kind of up in the air. This nails that down a little bit more so we know what we're working towards.
Excellent. And Comptroller Treasurer, because the next question is, where's the money coming from? And that's your bailiwick.
Sure. So as far as the funding for the $60,000, a couple of options. We can look at utilizing fund balance if there's money left at the end of the year, and depending on how we're sitting with fund balance. Otherwise, if that doesn't end up being an option, talked with Director Badoon, and he said that his public works projects are coming in under budget for this year, and that there should be some money left over in terms of the capital projects that the Public Works Department is doing this year. So that would be our second option, just in case there ends up not being money in fund balance. We do expect to have the unspent capital project funds to be utilized to cover the $60,000.
Thank you for the information, all of the directors and Comptroller Treasurer. Questions, clarifications from members of the Finance Committee first.
This is Alder Slowinski.
Mm-hmm. Yes, go ahead, please.
Again, I'm going to sound like a broken record here.
I know, that's okay.
I have yet to see any other entity step up to the plate and kind of come on board with this project with us. I again don't feel that the city taxpayers should brunt the burden of this, and it should be done in the preliminary stages of this, and not once we're invested in it so much that we can't look back. My question is the comptroller just stated that we could use some monies from possibly some capital projects that came under budget, or otherwise the contingent, or I'm sorry, not contingency, but
the fund balance.
Fund balance. Thank you.
You're welcome.
My concern here is as we spoke about the budget a few months ago, mm-hmm. there was projects that we pushed back because we did not have money. So I guess my question is why does this project get the prioritization of coming to the top of the list when we have some extra funds that these other projects these monies could be put towards? And my next question is it looks like we have another, $200,000 that we're going to have to find for 2021 to do phase 2 and 3. Where's that money coming from? Again, here we're starting to commit to this project and we really don't have a game plan. We're just kind of like, oh, okay, we have extra money here. We have extra money here. That's poor planning in my mind. I'm not going to approve this just for the fact that I don't understand how this project gets top priority. Again, I think it's a great project, but for us to just say, oh yeah, we have extra money here, let's put it towards this, and these other projects that have been waiting just keep getting pushed aside. So that's my comments. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you for your comments and your questions. Duly noted. I'm happy that you are consistent in your point of view. That's good. And Alder Shore, please.
Thanks. I was going to say it is really helpful to have that time frame to help us, because that help us understand this. That's a really important context, and I think it's also part of the answer to one of the questions that Alder Slowinski was raising. Those TAP grants, I guess, are, and I hadn't focused on this prior, but I guess there are now kind of an every other year round. Yeah. And, if it was on odd years, we'd be probably looking on a little bit of a longer timeline. We'd be looking to 2023, but because it's in the even years, we've, got this 12 months here to kind of get our application ready. So that's just a point on that. And I don't disagree about the burden sharing point at all. I think it's totally fair to be looking to other local governments to chip in, to pitch in. I also, I take the point, it's a good point in terms of not wanting to wait until, looks like everything's done and they don't, they don't have to, right?
Right.
But having said all of that, I do think that I am comfortable that they're not having pitched in now, right? I don't consider it too late, or too late already, or getting too far down the road without them. I think there's still a chance to have some equitable burden sharing. Thanks.
You're very welcome. Other members of the Finance Committee?
Alder Dalton. I would also echo Alder Swinski's question as for the phase 2 and 3 dollars outlined on the memo for either Comptroller Treasurer Vladeck or Director Kramer, where we anticipate those funds come from. I know we've kind of alluded to it in previous discussions about this, but just so that as a Finance Committee, we can have an understanding of where money that's coming in the upcoming year might be coming from. And so I do think we should look to other entities for funding and support of this project. My conversations with Director Kramer have given me confidence that that work is being done and is in progress. And I think that even without other communities' support, that this project is a pretty important one for our community. And so I'm happy to move forward with what this proposal is asking for.
Thank you, Alder Dalton, for your comments and your question. And Alder Morrow, we haven't heard from you. Did you have any questions or comments? Oh, are you still there?
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, yes. I thought maybe
Okay.
we lost you.
You did for a while. I have to reboot my computer, so I'm on the phone.
I'm sorry.
I echo what Alder Dalton said.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'll reserve my comments until others have spoken. Any members of council? Yes, Mr. May, I'll get to you in a minute. Alder Kneebone.
This particular phase is dependent on winter weather. The area that has to be engineered is wet. We have to move when the ground is frozen. So this is the first phase. This says to everybody else, we're committed to this. We're willing to spend some money now, and we want everybody else to know that this is a project that's worth doing. This is critically important to this side of Stevens Point. There is no good way besides the one sidewalk on the south side of Highway 10 to get from here to there on a bike or by walking or jogging or pushing a kid in a stroller or a wagon. There's no good way but Highway 10. This is it. The value to this part of Stevens Point is incalculable right now. The $60,000 is a small price to pay to say we're committed and to find out how much this is going to cost. We have to do this in order to say, look, this is how much we have to raise. We know this is what it's going to cost. This is what we have to raise. Who's with us? Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you. Any other members of council? Oh, Alder Leek, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I would like to echo Alder Nebon in that it's also, I think, important for my district, for District 8. That is getting over to that side of town, other than through Highway 10, would be a huge improvement for this neighborhood and the surrounding area. And also, I think it is important that we do the homework before we go. Aha.
There you go. You're still there.
Did you hear everything I just said?
We did. I did.
Oh, okay,
anyway.
good. Okay,
Yes.
good.
You're much more clear now. I thought maybe it was
Okay.
my age and my ears, you know?
No, I just forgot to put this thing down.
Okay.
But yeah, it's important for us to do our homework if we're going to be looking for grants and outside funding and so forth. So, I've done work on a granting committee, and that's the sort of thing we always looked at was, does the applicant have, how committed is the applicant to the project? And of course, also, are there other funders, or are they asking everything from us? But so, I think with what Alder Slinsky was saying is I think eventually, the funding agency will want to see that there's broad commitment, but there also has to be some leadership. So, and I'm fully supportive of us leading the way.
Thank you, sir. Any other members of council? I'm going to scroll through, just make sure I'm. Mr. Mayor.
You have 3 minutes.
Is that what you wanted to tell me?
Well, that was part of it, and no big rush.
Yeah.
I also wanted to comment on this too, that we've asked the directors to explore, so that the TAP grant requires things be built to a certain standard. In some cases, that can be a larger than needed standard. So we've got the directors working on that as well. But this is like one small piece of it. So we need this to determine if we could do this more cost effectively by not pursuing the TAP grant. TAP grant's going to be a little more expensive because it has to be built to a higher standard, but we're not going to jeopardize our ability to pursue the TAP grant. This piece is needed regardless of what we do. And with all the letters that we've already got on file, we already have our ask list for that community participation. With all the support we've got, I think we're going to have a fair amount of community support. This is I don't want to say worst case scenario, but it is the largest expense that we would have. And the director's memo, when we're looking at $1.5 million to $2 million, we may be able to do it significantly cheaper, and the directors are going to keep working on that. Looks like you've got about 2 minutes, Madam President.
I have 2 minutes, and I can say what I need.
Or vote.
Yeah, I can say what I need to say. I wholeheartedly agree that we need to find additional partners. I'm proud to co-found and be the treasurer of the Friends of Emerson Park, now working on a capital campaign of nearly $700,000. So I would be remiss, and I would not be honoring those hardworking folks of the Friends of Emerson Park if I didn't say I would expect those in support of the Plover River Trail crossing. Got it? 1 minute, I know. So I wholeheartedly agree with Alder Slinsky that we do need to have partners along the way. And I also agree with Alder Leek that the city is best suited to lead that way to this success. So I will wait before calling a vote, because I think we have like 30 seconds. Is that about right, Mr. Mayor? Unless we can do this quickly. Is there a motion to on this topic?
Alder Dalton, I would move. I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve. Thank you.
I have one quick comment. Correction.
Okay.
That was made by Alder Nebon and Alder Leek regarding this is the only crossing, Highway 10 is the only crossing to get over I-39. That is incorrect. Just to the south of here, there's a bike lane that goes right underneath the I-39 along the railroad tracks.
Yes, and you're absolutely right, but I'm going to call, before I call for the vote, I'm going to put the Finance Committee in recess until after the special council meeting. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We are back in session for the Finance Committee meeting of December 14th, 2020. There was a motion and a second on the floor, and typically one would not address a comment or a question after a motion and a second. However, I just want to acknowledge that what Alder Slawinski said is there is a southern route underneath I-39 from the industrial park to the business park. So that is an accurate statement. I just wanted to acknowledge it because it kind of got lost in the clutter. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
And anyone opposed would be no.
No.
Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Let me get back to my agenda. Thank you for your...
Quick question from Lee. That was just Finance Committee, right?
That is correct.
Okay, we're back. Okay, wanted to double check that.
Yep,
Thanks.
yep. No, good question. I was trying to move things along so the mayor can enjoy cookies and I can enjoy my supper. So next item on the agenda is item 5, purchase of 17.35 acres in East Park Commerce Center. And I'm not going to read off the parcel ID because it's long, but you can all read it. And there was a memo about this. So Comptroller Treasurer or Director Karnowski, please.
Thank you, President Johnson. Essentially, before you tonight is the financial approval to acquire the property in East Park Commerce Center for Lineage Logistics Phase 6 expansion. The acquisition would be $520,500. We would then turn around and sell, as part of the Phase 6 expansion, $468,000. This would be contingent upon development agreement approval by the council and a number of other things. So we are essentially just putting our ducks in a row to take action on the closing and sale of the property if and when the city and Lineage are ready to move forward together.
Thank you, Director Karnowski. Excuse me. And if you were anyone, there were many of the alders who were at the Plan Commission meeting on Monday night, where last Monday night, a week ago, wow, how time flies, where this was discussed. Are there questions of Director Karnowski or Comptroller Laddick at this point from the members of the Finance Committee? Members of the council? Members of the public? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion on the item.
This is Alder Slawinski, being that this is my district, and this is very exciting to see that the Lineage continues to expand, or that area continues to expand, and I will move approval of this item.
Thank you, Alder Slawinski. Is there a second?
I second.
Alder Murrow, second. One last call for questions, comments. Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Anyone opposed would be no. Abstentions. Motion carries. Excuse me. Item 6, sale of 15.6 acres of land in East Park Commerce Center with the property ID, as you can see noted in your agenda, which is identical to that above. And this is the sale of something we just bought so that project can move on. Any comments from members, questions from members of the Finance Committee?
I'll move approval.
There is a motion to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second. Alder Slawinski.
Thank you. Any questions from members of the committee or council? Members of the public? Thank you, everyone. All those in favor in the sale of this property, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed would be no. Abstentions? Motion carries. Item 7, approving a framework for a grant program for Edgewater residents. Comptroller Treasurer, please.
Yes, so
Speak
the
to this.
memos in your packet, I'll take you through the numbers a little bit because it might be a little tough to understand if I don't kind of take it step by step. But basically, I did work with the numbers on the grant program a little bit more. A couple of changes that I made since I showed this to you last time. One is I know last time I had it as percentage of county median income. And as we're getting this to, the phase where we're probably pretty close to wanting to give something to the residents as far as here's what we're looking at, wanted to make it a little bit more understandable. So that's why I changed it to some salary ranges instead of percentage of county median income, just to make it a little bit more understandable. And so people can see where they would fall and what they would be eligible for. And then also I know that before I was really looking at two different buckets for a grant program. And I did sort of break those apart a little bit more from two categories into three, just to target it a little bit more specifically. When I really went through the numbers again, I just found that trying to sort of categorize some of the seniors into two different buckets just didn't quite give enough precision based on what we needed. So basically the overall target here, what we would like to do is make sure that nobody is paying more than 35% of their income in rent. And the reason for 35% is typically, you'd say that it should be under 40%. However, the residents will also have to pay for electricity. So wanted to leave a little bit of margin there to pay the electric bill as well. So what that gets us then overall is we've got one income range of about $19,000 to $20,500 a year, proposing a grant of $140 a month for that. So that would actually bring the rent after the grant program down to $545 for that group of people. That actually is the same rental amount as the current rent at Edgewater Manor. So the only real adjustment for the residents in that income category would be having to pay for electricity. And then you'll notice I have the percent of midpoint. And when I say percent of midpoint, what I did, so for that first category, I took the middle of the range. So if you have a range from 19,000 to 20,500, I took $19,750 to say, okay, somebody who's in the middle of this range, what's the percentage of their income that they'd be paying in rent? So that's where you can see those first three salary ranges, they're all over. So that somebody in that middle of that salary range would be over 35%. And then you can see that once we put the grant in place, and now you look at the percent of midpoint, somebody who's in that middle of that range, that $19,750, they'd be paying 33.1% of their income in rent. Somebody who's at the minimum, so for instance, somebody who's at the 19,000, they would be paying 34.4% of their income in rent. So that just ensures that we're accomplishing what we want to, which is generally to make sure that nobody's paying more than 35% of their income in rent. So then you've got the next two ranges, 20,500 to 22,000, proposing a $100 grant, and then for the range $22,000 a year to $24,000 a year, proposing a grant of $60 a month. And the intention there would be that it should make it, affordable for the residents in various income categories. I'd also like to note that, as far as the bottom of that range, that 19,000, you could have somebody who makes less than that as well. So really, I should say 20,500 and lower, really, for that first range. But I kind of had to put a number in there in order to get a midpoint. And then the other piece of this that I would like to acknowledge is that, so there are 22 residents at Edgewater Manor that do receive vouchers. We did talk to the Portage County Housing Authority to see how the various residents will be affected. 19 out of the 22 can qualify to live at the Berkshire without any problem. There are 3 where they may not qualify just based on their income. So that is one piece of it that I would like to hold open as well, is to say, okay, if we can figure out a way to do something to make this work for those 3 that are going to have an issue, I think that would be great if we could do that. The main stumbling block is going to be finding something that we can do that's not going to run afoul of federal regulations and those federal requirements. And that's really been the challenge with the voucher residents. But I just did want to point that out as well, that something to be aware of. And I do have a call into the Portage County Housing Authority to talk through that a little bit further, to see if there is anything that we can do for those 3.
Thank you, Comptroller Treasurer Laddick. I have one question, and then I'll go to members of the Finance Committee. What is the range? Where is the top of the range to qualify for the Section 8 vouchers? Do you know? Does Director Ryan know?
I don't have the answer to that. I don't know if Ryan, if you have the answer to that.
I don't know off the top of my head, but I'm more than happy to look into it and provide an answer via email to the members.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful. And I understand, again, thank you for this first iteration, Comptroller Treasurer. It helps. It's easier to frame out something that we're looking at than kind of nothing. So it's a moving target. Thank you very much. Okay, members of the committee, questions of the Comptroller Treasurer.
This is Alder Slowinski.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
I guess I just have a question regarding the the incomes that are below that 19,000. Is that $140 a month? Is that going to be the max, or are we going to still work with those residents, and will it be additional funds a month per your little chart here?
So I guess for the first iteration, my thought was the grant of $140 does bring them down to the $545, which would be their current rent at Edgewater Manor. So if somebody is, let's say, less than $19,000, they might be going more than 35% of their income. However, they would already be in that kind of a situation where, basically they're already paying $545 a month in rent. The only, I guess, piece to keep in mind with that is that they are having to pick up the expense of the electricity as well. So, ultimately, I think that would be up to the committee, depending on how much money we have to work with, because part of the other difficulty of putting together this grant program and figuring out how much we have available to spend is just the fact that right now we don't know exactly where everybody falls in the various income groups. So it's hard to know exactly how much it's going to cost. So I guess one of my thoughts is, well, if we can at least sort of get something together to say, okay, this is what we're committing to at this point. And then if we find that based on the enrollment in the program, based on the makeup, if there is extra money available, then maybe we can look at some of those other things that maybe the finance committee would like to look at if there are specific concerns.
All right, yeah, thank you for that. And again, thank you for putting this together, because this does help to actually see numbers, and I appreciate the work that you're doing on this to get this put together. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Alder Slowinski. Members of the public, I will go to you last after the Finance Committee and the alders have had a chance, so please wait. I appreciate your patience. Other members of the Finance Committee, questions, comments, feedback?
Alder Dalton, I have a few comments.
Sure, go ahead.
One, I appreciate, trying to put some numbers and figure out some ranges to this. And I think I just want to reiterate, and I guess I'm wondering if maybe Director Kanowski or Comptroller Treasurer has done any research about the availability of compatible units for people that might be moving, because my investigation into places like the Windmere and some other places is that many of these facilities have waiting lists and don't actually have them. So if we are creating a program asking residents to move on, and there's a restriction that's within Portage County, if there's not actually available housing here that works, then, well, we might actually just be asking residents to move out of our county, which I think is difficult. And even if, maybe there's something in Amherst, I think it's important to recognize that moving from downtown city of Stevens Point, where you're right next to the ARDC and the bus line, to Amherst is a pretty substantial lifestyle change for these individuals. And secondly, we had talked about incorporating moving costs into a program. And I'm wondering if there have been any ideas to incorporate moving costs as part of the program, because those could also be quite substantial for many of these individuals who may not have family to help.
Yes, and I think to answer the question, the thought would be to do something in terms of moving as well to help cover the moving costs, or to supply movers or something. That still is something that staff would like to put together as well as part of this package.
And yeah, good comments. Thank you about checking the availability of compatible units throughout the community. Excellent comment. Alder Shore, it looks like you have your hand up. And please.
Thank you, Chair. I want to echo the appreciation to Comptroller Treasurer Laddick and Director Kanowski for their work on this. It's complicated. It's calculation with a lot of factors, just as we've been discussing. The only other thing that I wanted to raise was something that came up briefly in the last discussion and is important, which is that while it is true that that Edgewater is kind of coming to the end of the process, we need to not forget that this is we're prepared. You know, this isn't like a sudden, you know, rush. Just, you know, everybody out in a few months. This is understood to be a gradual process, taking a year or two, possibly. And so that's just an important point, and might even relate to what we've been talking about here in terms of some of those waiting lists. I don't know how long some of those waiting lists are taking, but it's the kind of thing that I think this gradual and phased and extended transition process is intended to address. Thanks.
You're very welcome. Other members of the Finance Committee? Members of the council? Alder Fischler, is that your hand up or were you scratching your nose?
No, I just had a quick question for Corlatic.
Sure.
So with this outline, I just had a quick question about how long people would be having these grants if this did take place and everything were to go as planned with the grant program. I'm sure it depends on the amount of money that's total, but just given that, I mean, it would be over a month, obviously, right? Would it be like a year or two, or would it just greatly depend on the number of applicants for this grant program?
Excellent question. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the intention is to make this work over the long term. So right now I have this projected out to last 20 years. So, you know, certainly that's a legitimate concern that we don't want to put something in place that's just a stopgap type of solution where, okay, now after 5 years, now we have a problem where we've got a lot of people who have a difficult time affording their rent. So we do intend to make this last over the long term. And one of the other pieces of information that we still need to get as well is, you know, the ages of all the residents to really be able to project out, you know, how long term we have to plan on this grant being in place. But the thought process would be that it would be over the very long term, that hopefully this grant program could be in place until, you know, those residents need to transition either to moving outside of Portage County or to a different, you know, maybe to an assisted living facility or some other type of a program.
That answer your question, Alder Fischler?
Yes, thank you.
All right, you are welcome. Other members of council? Since I see a lot of black boxes, I'm assuming nobody has their hands up. So, and now we'll go to members of the public, and Ms. Meyer had her hand up. I will now acknowledge you. You have a little bit of time to ask questions. You are on mute, ma'am.
Mary Meyer, Edgewater. Thank you for this chance to talk to you. Speaking only to tonight's agenda item, I do thank you very much for considering a grant program for Edgewater residents who need help affording to move to Berkshire or other places. I talked to Corey Laddick late last week, and he confirmed what I thought I'd understood, that it hadn't been planned that the grant program would include Edgewater's Section 8 voucher holders. I told him that I had just discovered that I wouldn't be able to move into Berkshire without help from the city, even though I'm on the voucher program. My total monthly income is $329 a month. On the voucher program, you're not allowed to pay more than 40% of your adjusted monthly income for rent and utilities. Comptroller Laddick and Director Kronosky know that a voucher holder can't receive rent assistance that would be paid directly to the landlord, But I told Mr. Laddick that my understanding from talking with Wendy at the Portage County Housing Authority is that a monthly stipend should do the trick. Corey graciously indicated that he'd be open to being creative to help those voucher holders, and he was going to reach out to Wendy. So I'd really appreciate it if you'd include in your framework for a grant program help for at least those few voucher holders whose income is so low that they wouldn't be able to move to Berkshire or another decent apartment, even on the voucher program. Another concern is the number of years that the program is planned for. 20 years may not really be long enough when you consider that after those 20 years, especially after rent increases, many former Edgewater residents will find themselves in an apartment that they can't afford and would be faced with moving when they're 20 years older than they are now, namely 75, 85, 95 years and older, when moving again would be harder than ever. Another question I have is what security would grant recipients have that you won't end the grant program at some point earlier than what you committed to? I'm also concerned that the grant program wouldn't cover those who move outside of Portage County, along with what Alderperson Dalton said, when perhaps some seniors' best option if they have to move out of Edgewater may be to move closer to family members who live outside of Portage County. I appreciate your careful consideration and your generosity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am, for your comments, and very good comments, I must say. Thank you. All right, thank you. Are there other members of the public who wish to speak? I'm kind of strolling through the Brady Bunch boxes here. Right, it sounds like there's more homework that needs to be done. This is a great start. Based on the comments and the feedback that you've heard tonight, I'm going to ask Director Kronowski as well on this, as well as Comptroller Treasurer. Do you feel confident you have enough information to kind of take this to the next step?
Well, I guess, so the only thing from my perspective is, I guess, you know, I would like a little bit of feedback as far as, okay, is this, you know, along the right track, or, you know, are there other specific things that you'd like us to look into? I mean, obviously we'll find out more information once we actually get some information from the residents. But I guess just if we had any sort of feedback or, you know, anything specifically that you wanted staff to look into regarding the grant program, or
Sure.
anything that stands out that you think should be tweaked or anything like that.
So I guess I will speak on behalf of what I heard. These are the notes that I have. Is we need to survey residents, and if you're looking for some direction there, I think what I'm hearing from the Finance Committee is just that. A missing piece here in all of this is better understanding where each resident is sitting in this spectrum. And that work has to be done carefully and discreetly, of course. So I think that is, I mean, it's something I would like to see. Of course, I want no names associated with that. I want to keep people, their privacy, and respect that. The idea of a stipend program versus a voucher, while that may seem subtle, it could be significant. So on behalf of Ms. Meyer, I think I would like to see what that could look like, and how that relates to the definitions in the federal programs related to Section 8 housing. Because again, our goal is to not make things worse for residents, but in fact, at least have an equilibrium. I think possibly we may need to have a discussion, and that's for a future agenda, obviously. What happens if a resident cannot find appropriate housing within Portage County and they move to Marshfield or Mosinee or wherever, could there be an incremental way to support that? Maybe a shorter period of time. So I think we need to explore that. And I'd like to, look at what is our minimum and maximum of what we would be looking at for supporting moving expenses. And I want to understand, and maybe we could have somebody come to Finance Committee who can help us better understand the Section 8 program. So who qualifies, how they qualify, what their income limits are, and what sort of additional income may or may not come into that. So that's what I'm taking away from this discussion. If there's anybody who disagrees with that, please speak up. But does that give you direction, Comptroller Treasurer?
Yes, that does. That's helpful.
Okay. Anybody, any members of the Finance Committee want to see other information or data? Oh, I think the other thing, and I know this is probably a little bit more challenging, is to understand the market right now for similar housing. And I don't know that we necessarily know that. So that would be a good piece. And I do recognize this may take a bit, and we've got that thing called 2 holidays in between now and our next meeting. So I recognize that this could take a little bit of time, but to me, you are headed in the right direction, Corey.
Okay.
And I think with the help of the Finance Committee, plus the feedback from the members of the public and council, I think we can build something. So, all right. Thank you. You've got your homework. Appreciate that. And I again appreciate the work that you put into it. So next item on the agenda, which I need to find, here we go. Review results of the competitive sale of city debt 2020A and 2020B. Corey.
Yes, so we did go to market with our 2 borrowings and got very good interest rates. Definitely we expected to get good rates. For the tax exempt borrowing, that was a little bit shorter of a term. The interest rate is 0.6%.
Wow.
So yes. So
nice.
well under 1%. So that's definitely happy with that. I think that, I didn't really look through a lot of historic records or anything, but I think that probably has to be the cheapest borrowing that the city has ever done. So that was definitely good. And of course, you'll also remember that part of this was part of this whole transaction, we also were able to retire some debt in TIF District 9 that we were paying 3 and 3.5% interest rates on. So certainly that was very successful in terms of getting some lower interest rate debt in the mix. And then also for the taxable debt, it does go a little bit longer. So that one was 1.7%. So still very good. And of course, that one is going all the way to 2040. So the longer term, 20 years will bump that up a little bit. And then also with it being a taxable issuance where the investors have to pay taxes on that interest income, that also increases the interest rate a little bit.
Yeah, that is very favorable. My department just purchased a $1.2 million landfill compactor, waste compactor, and it was 0.6% interest. So it's good to work for an organization, and in your case, work for the city of Stevens Point, which is well positioned to enjoy that kind of interest rate. So that just demonstrates good financial management.
Yeah, absolutely. Our good bond rating definitely helps. So.
Absolutely. So thank you for that work. Any questions for the comptroller treasurer on that? Hearing none, I'm gonna zip along then. Review expenditures related to COVID-19 and reimbursement through the routes to recovery, which is commonly referred to as the CARES Act.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Corey.
Yep. So we did get a grant to help the city cover some of the extraordinary expenses related to COVID-19 this year. This grant was provided, it was through the federal CARES Act that the state got these grant dollars and then decided to pass some of that money on to municipalities. So they gave each municipality an allocation of grant dollars to cover COVID-19 expenses. Our allocation is a little bit over $448,000. And we did have to have it all spent by the beginning of November. It was the eligible period of the grant program. Throughout this process, we were about on track to hit that target. And then toward the end, a couple of things happened. One is that the state opened up the criteria a little bit to make it a little bit more broad, to give municipalities a little bit more flexibility in terms of what expenses they could claim. So that made more of our expenses eligible. And then also, as we know locally in our community and in various city departments, COVID-19 definitely increased rather significantly in October. So that, and into November, obviously, so that did increase our paid leave expenses toward the end of the grant period as well. So that's why our total expenditures due to COVID-19 that are grant eligible came in at $556,826. So where that leaves us then is we've got about $107,000 in expenses that is potentially unreimbursed. There is still a possibility that we could get additional grant dollars, especially if there are other municipalities that didn't spend their entire allocation. The state has talked about maybe reallocating those to some of the municipalities that had expenses that were a little bit more significant and that went over their allocations. So that will remain to be seen. But even if that doesn't happen, some of the expenses, such as the expenses for paid leave, they're already general fund expenses that are already accounted for in departmental budgets. Of course, for some departments, having an employee, out for 2 weeks on paid leave isn't always a hard cost that necessarily hits your budget. Sometimes where you're really feeling that cost is not having that employee for 2 weeks. So, not all of the expenses that are grant eligible are necessarily going to, hit us in the budget. Just depending on the department and depending on, if they have to call in people for overtime to cover sick leave or not. Usually police and fire, they have to call in people on overtime if they have people out, whereas most of the other city departments, you just run short that day. So we do have it covered if we don't get reimbursed for that additional amount. And then I also included the breakdown of what was spent in the various categories. The most significant expenses that we had were expenditures to facilitate telework or working from home. That was $232,000. Just making sure that we got various employees set up to work from home. We did have some computers that needed to be replaced anyway, so we did purchase a number of laptops, both to get our employees on the latest technology and then also to facilitate working from home or the need to transition between working at the office and working from home. So, and with that, just available for any other questions about this.
Excellent rundown. I had a similar rundown with my department. So this is kind of that time of year where we're doing that based on the grant cycle for that. Questions for the comptroller treasurer from the committee? From any members of the council? And any members of the public? I do think some of these investments, especially the expenditures to facilitate telework, while it had to happen rather rapidly, I think we'll enjoy some longer term benefits from that, particularly as we explore discussions about space and how we use it and what that means for future capital expenses. So, and so thank you very much for that. Moving on. And where's my agenda? Here it is. Approval of amendments to the 2020 budget.
Yes, so I have a memo explaining some of the budget amendments that I'd like to make before the end of the year. I should note that this is really just an attempt to fix the major, most significant problems. So it's not all exhaustive in terms of, you know, every single line item that could be tweaked. And really for budget amendments, you know, my philosophy on that is just to grab the biggest, most pressing issues. So just going through this briefly, you know, of course, this has been an unusual year with COVID-19. We did have some fairly significant revenue impacts, especially with room tax and with parking revenues. So the first part of this amendment is to try to rectify that as far as the revenue shortfalls. So right now, anticipating a shortfall of 110,000 in room tax revenue, and that's just the room tax revenue that gets transferred to the general fund. 30% of room tax collections get transferred to the general fund. And then also anticipating a shortfall in parking revenue of about $60,000. So of course we need a way to backfill that revenue. So I did find a couple of things in the 2020 budget. One is the payment in lieu of taxes from Shopko. We weren't sure if we were going to get that or not for 2020, so we didn't budget for it. We did end up getting that, so that's some extra revenue. Also, the city clerk's office did get an election grant to help with some of the extraordinary election expenses this year, so we're able to add that to our revenue budget. And then we also had some gains in investments because we do have a bond portfolio. When interest rates go down, the value of those investments go up. So the change in market value, we're anticipating about another $140,000 that we can count on there. So that's enough to offset those revenue reductions. And then for expenses, we did have some savings in terms of fuel, and we also didn't spend very much of contingency this year. So we can take about 35,000 out of fuel, 70,000 out of contingency. And then we have some various expenses that we are going to need to add some money to. We've got the emergency management salary that was approved earlier this year. We just wanted to formalize that to get that formally in the budget. We have a couple of adjustments with health insurance based on health insurance enrollments. We have the clerk's office with extraordinary election expenses and with postage, with the number of absentee ballots. And then we also are over budget on IT contracted services. So also proposing a budget amendment to try and rectify that situation. Basically, the situation with IT is that we did have a new IT person start September of 2019. We had anticipated throttling back our IT contracted services fairly early into 2020. And unfortunately, that wasn't able to happen until a little bit later in the year this year. So that's why that line item is over budget.
All right. Thank you, Comptroller Treasurer. Questions from the members of the Finance Committee? Alder Shore.
Thank you, Chair. When I think of payment in lieu of taxes, I usually think of tax exempt entities like a nonprofit hospital or university. So what's going on here?
What's the unique situation with Shopko? So we have actually an agreement with Shopko because we own their parking lot, and they of course use that parking lot, but that is a city-owned lot. And I think part of the justification for the payment, in addition to the maintenance of that lot, is also that, okay, if they owned it, you know, they'd be paying taxes on that property, but because we own it and we're the city, we're tax exempt. So that's a piece of property that they use and we don't get any tax revenue from.
Answer your question, Alder Shore? Excellent. Other members of the Finance Committee with any questions on the request to approve budget amendments? Any members of the council or the public? All right. This is a request to amend the budget with these adjustments. I would entertain a motion.
I'll move approval of the amendments to the budget.
I'll second.
It was a race. We have a motion by Alder Shore and a second by Alder Dalton. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Anyone opposed would be no. Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. And then we also have, excuse me, item 11 is the approval of transfer from the general fund to the capital projects fund. Once again, Comptroller Treasurer.
Yes, so this item is before you. Basically, the situation is, it's a very good situation that we have our TIF districts, especially TIF District 6, that's able to repay the general fund. And those repayments have definitely accelerated in 2020. So what that allows us to do is it allows us to put more money into capital projects, because the repayment of those IOUs, basically that builds up your unassigned fund balance. So this would be transferring a total of $2,026,618 from the general fund to the capital projects fund. One piece of that is really the proceeds of those TIF repayments, and also some of the excess fund balance that we had at the end of 2019. And then also we did approve earlier in the year use of some additional fund balance for the TAP grant project. And that project is in the capital projects fund. So that this is just formalizing that to transfer the money from the general fund to the capital projects fund.
Pardon me. Any questions for the Comptroller Treasurer from members of the committee? Members of council? Members of the public? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the transfers.
This is all tomorrow. So moved.
We have a motion by Morrow. Is there a second?
Alder Dalton, no second.
We have a second from Dalton. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Anyone approved would, or anyone not approving would be no. Abstentions? Motion carries. Approve the write-off of uncollectible personal property taxes and accounts receivable. You all saw that list. This is our annual writing off of those things. Pretty self-explanatory. We can't collect, so let's get them off the books. Does any member of the Finance Committee have questions? Any members of council or the public? Excellent. I would entertain a motion then to write off the list as presented.
Alder Morrow, so moved.
Then we have a motion by Morrow. Is there a second?
Alder Dalton, I'll second.
We have second by Dalton. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed would be no. Abstentions? Motion carries. Approval of claims paid. We have paid all the bills and now we just need a nod of consent that they did the right thing. Any questions?
Alder Morrow, move to approved.
And there is a motion by Morrow. Is there a second?
I'll second Alder Slawinski.
Thank you. We have a second. All those in favor of approving the list of the claims paid, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed would be no. Abstentions. Motion carries. Item 14, adjourn into closed session approximately 8 p.m. We're ahead of the curve here. Pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 19.85, paren 1, paren 2, for the purpose of deliberating or negotiating the purchase of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session on the following: negotiating an amendment to the development agreement with Lineage Logistics. I would entertain a motion. Oh, did I miss something?
And just, so typically for closed session, we try to do those at the end of the meeting. And I know this meeting, it's a little bit different because we had to go first because
right,
we had our special counsel and so forth. But I guess, you know, I just throw that out there that if you wanted to,
fair enough.
We could recess, let the other committee meetings go, and then reconvene to take up the closed session. It's whatever the wishes of, you know.
Yeah, I think that's a fair enough. And I would say at the discretion of the chair, we will recess the finance committee until such a time all other council committee business has been taken care of. So stay tuned. All right, we're assuming we're going to go into closed session because we don't have a motion yet. I will, I should say at 7:57, the Finance Committee is back in session after a short hiatus. I will restate item 14, adjourn into closed session approximately 8 o'clock. Hey, we're close. Pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 19.85, paren 1, paren E, for the purpose of deliberating or negotiating the purchase of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. We were looking at the closed session as it relates to negotiating an amendment to the development agreement with Lineage Logistics. I would entertain a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
We have a motion by Shore. Is there a second?
I'll second.
And
Alder
there's a
Slawinski.
Thank you, Alder Slawinski. Second by Alder Slawinski. This is a roll call vote, so I don't know who's going to do that.
I can call the roll.
Okay.
Dalton.
No.
Johnson.
Aye.
Morrow.
Aye.
Shore.
Aye.
Slowinski.
Aye.
4-1.
Excellent. Sorry, had a mouthful of water. Motion carries. It is 7:59. We will be in closed session. I'm assuming,
Hey,
Mayor,
Madam
you're
Chair?
going to start moving people out?
Yep, give me a few minutes, or a little bit of time. We also will not be reconvening into open session for action.
Excuse
So
me.
we will adjourn in closed session.
Okay.
Just so everybody knows.
Videos of these meetings are available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.